Hi, I'm Chris and this is Fiido's latest but not greatest e-bike from the mid. It's the L3. Now this model is focused on being compact and portable, much more than the D4S and the D11 models that I have reviewed. It's a foldable design. It can fold up to a very small size for a bike, and that means you can fit it into, say, the boot of a car, the trunk of a car, without too much difficulty, under the stairs or in the metro, and carry it with your city commutes. Now it has 14-inch wheels, which are smaller than the other models that had the 20-inch wheels. I personally prefer the 20-inch wheels. And we've got a large, comfortable seat on this one here. Removable battery, which is 23 amp hours, and it's powered by a 350 watt motor this time around. So in this in-depth review, I will take a detailed look at the design, the ride comfort, and exactly what you can expect, including the range, which they claim is 80 to 130 kilometers. Will I be able to achieve somewhere around that in this in-depth review?
So it comes in a reasonably sized box here. It's not actually as big as I thought it would be for a bike, but of course it's foldable, collapses down, and it did ship out of the warehouse in Poland that they have. So I didn't have to pay any taxes on this at all. The bike is well padded. We have a user manual right here, some Allen keys just to tighten things up. And in this box here, you will find the charger. So this charger here has an EU plug to it, but they have included a UK adapter, if you're buying one for the UK, that is. Now the charge time of the lithium-ion battery is approximately 8 to 9 hours. The only assembly that is required is the seat post here. We just simply need to slot that in. The bike is in its folded state, as you can see inside the box, with a lot of padding around it too, to protect it from any damage and the frame rubbing up against any parts. So here is the L3 next to the M1 Pro. So the M1 Pro has the 4-inch fat tires on it, and they are really ideal for these conditions. It also has suspension. And then the D4S, which is on the left, the D4S 20-inch rims as well, just like the M1 Pro. So the 14-inch rims, clearly smaller, clearly a smaller frame on this one, not quite as comfortable, I find, to ride the L3 because of the frame size. Now I'm 186 centimeters tall, and depending if you're a shorty, then you might be okay on the smaller L3. It is all about its compact size, portability, and it folds up into really nothing for a bike. So being a removable battery, you can of course charge it at home. You can take it out of the bike, charge it safely at home, and it does have a fan within the power supply that is keeping it cool, so you don't need to worry about it overheating, which is a good safety thing to have. Now this battery's capacity is 23.2 amp hours, or 1,113 watt hours. So it's a very large battery. It is quite heavy, weighs about 4 kilos or so, and does take around 9 hours to fully charge. So it is a slow charging battery.
The Fiido L3 weighs 24 kilos. That is with the battery. Without it, it's 21 kilos. Right now I have the handlebars in the maximum position, and the seat post is almost in its highest position. This is a very large seat. It does have springs in it and a lot of padding, very wide. In fact, too wide for me a little bit. Around this area when I'm riding and pedaling, that is. If you're not pedaling, then you won't have this problem. I find it does rub a little bit on my inner thighs, which is not great for later on if you're riding long distances. There is a little release here that you can lift the seat up like so. Now, why would you want to do that? That is actually for our battery pack, so we can remove it. You would have noticed that there is a lock right here. So with our key, we've got a spare. It's in the on position currently. You can turn it off, and then the unlock position, if you push in and turn it, that is how you can slide the battery out. So you're able to lock it in place and also disable the bike too if you didn't want anyone to power it on. The rims on the L3 here are 14 inches only, so they are small. We've got 160mm mechanical disc brakes, so they are not hydraulic, a sturdy kickstand, a rear reflector, and then we have this rear light which is always on when the bike is powered on. We have reasonable sized pedals on this particular bike. They are foldable, so all you need to do is just press this in the inside and then you can pull it up to get them out of the way for storage. They do feel sturdy. They're made out of a strong ABS plastic, and overall they're not too bad. They do have reflectors on them. Moving to the front of the brake, so another mechanical disc brake. This is 160mm. We have another mudguard and our front facing light, which you can turn on and off. Now you might have noticed that this particular bike does not have any gears. The other models I reviewed, they had Shimano gears with them, which were good for the hill climbs. Now the front crank, this one has 48 teeth on it, and the rear, this is geared with just 16 gears. So it will be a little bit harder to get up to that top speed with this particular setup, and also those climbs, just because we don't have a lower gear or any lower gears will be a little bit more challenging if you were to do it without any motor, that is. So this motor here in the hub, sealed away, is 350 watts. I've got no info on the actual torque rating of this one, what it can output, but it is enough to be able to help you up those climbs, and I'll be testing that out later on. Maximum speed, 25 kilometers per hour. That is limited by law. Now these tires are 1.95 inches the width of them, and as I mentioned before, 14 inches. So this is really the only reason you would go for a bike like this, is its size, its foldability. So the frame, very good welds on it. This one's painted with a nice grey metallic paint finish. There is a little safety lock here to keep this from unfolding when you're riding, which is unlikely to happen. Now it was a little bit loose, and I do recommend going around tightening things up. Up the top, we can see there is the standard mount there if you were to want to place a bottle holder on top of this, although it would be lying completely flat. So this lifts up, and then you can pull out the latch right here, and that is how you start to fold the bike in half. Very similar setup with the front too as well. There is this little latch that goes in here to make sure that this is not going to unlock when you're riding, which would be disastrous, of course. So make sure you've always got that pushed in. This lever then folds down, and allowing us then to push the handlebars and collapse them completely when you want to fold this up and put it under a steer wheel, for example. We don't have lock grips with this particular bike, but the grips they have used are not too bad. Now we have a trigger here for our accelerator, so you don't even need to kick off or anything. This will work. You have to be careful that if you grab the handlebar and just twist it here and it is on, the bike will take off, and that could provoke or cause an accident. The brake right here, this one is our front brake, and the rear brake is on the other side. This is where you will find our control. So there's a little screen up here that is a little hard to make out in daylight, and when you press the M button, that turns and powers it on. We've got our speed here in kilometers per hour. Up the top is a battery gauge. Now this battery gauge is broken down to 5 segments, each representing 20% of our battery life. There's no odometer with this, and this is also where we adjust the different modes. So we have a level 1, 2 and 3 of assist, and I believe it is 50%, 75 and then 100% pedaling assist that will be putting through to the pedals, to the motor, sorry. And here we have our lights and a horn, which is very loud. Now let's talk about the frame geometry and the size of it. I'm 186 centimeters tall, and I find this bike minute. It's tiny for me, for my size, and it feels like I'm riding one of those miniature clown bikes. So I decided to take my 7-year-old's bike for a ride. That my knees do come quite close to the handlebar, as you can see, and if I turn at the same time I could risk actually hitting them. So I do find the D4S, definitely the geometry of the frame and everything, a lot more comfortable. Now the seat is very, very nice, okay, very, very soft. It has the springs in it, and that just makes it feel good. However, when you pedal a lot, I notice, depending on your position of the seat, it being so wide, it does rub a little bit on my inner thighs, which is not good to see at all. Now there is right here, of course, the accelerator. So just pulling on that, you don't need to pedal at all, and it will just take off. So I can go along nice and steady and go right up to 25 kilometers per hour. And this is where the seat is comfortable. If you're not pedaling a lot, it's nice and soft. Got a bit of a bounce to it, and that's great. So this is where you can get around a range of non-assisted, not pedaling, of around about 25 to 30 kilometers just out of the battery pack, and that's not pedaling at all. You're just using it as really a scooter. Okay, so I've got a small climber head, which is not much at all. Let's see how these 14-inch wheels are going to handle it with it on the assist mode 3. You can also pull the trigger too as well. Very bumpy, but the 350 watt motor is handling that just fine. Powering up this. Now what about top speed? You have to really pedal quite hard to get it up to that top speed, I find, which is limited to 25 kilometers per hour with the motor assisting you. You can go over that, but really just downhill, because the way this is geared up, it's very hard to get up to that top speed without pedaling like a maniac. Alright, so I have a climb now, a proper climb here. Let's see how this bike fares on this climb without any gears, remember. So just using the battery, the motor, power up this to start with, and it's definitely a lot easier than you would expect, considering we have small wheels, 14 inches. I'm going up this, well, not too bad, but I do have to put a little bit of work into this climb. Now, is this motor more powerful than the D4S or the M1 Pro. Well, the M1 Pro has a 500 watt motor, so definitely not. It would power up this. And the D4S, to be honest, it feels about the same here on the climb. Even though this is supposed to have 100 watts more, it's doing a reasonably good job, slowly. And now I'm having to put quite a bit into this, quite a bumpy road now too. And a good chance for me to test the braking on this. So what I would do is get to a flat spot and I'm going to just put on full braking. So here we go, 1, 2, 3. All right, not too bad, very easy to skid that rear wheel. So there's one other thing to point out with this particular e-bike as well, that when you are using here the accelerator, okay, it will go into the cruise control mode if you hold it at that same speed. I let go of it and I keep going. But if I start to brake now, I want to slow down, it will keep going. It doesn't disengage that motor, which could be a little bit dangerous in some scenarios. So I want to brake, but I forgot that I've got the cruise control enabled. So you have to flick then the trigger to turn it off. So that's one possible safety concern. Now with our crank sensor, once I start pedaling, it detects that and gives me the assistance, either level 1, 2 or 3. As soon as I stop pedaling, it will stop giving me that assistance, which is how it should be. So what about the range? What can you expect out of this bike? Well, they say it can do 80 to 130 kilometers range, which I don't see being possible. Now, you might be able to get 80. 80 is more realistic. If you're on just the flat the whole time, you're using this in the city on flat roads, you're using bike lanes, very good, nice smooth roads, you don't have any climbs, that might be possible there. Now, my range I'm calculating is looking to be approximately 70 kilometers. That is with a few light climbs and maybe one bigger climb there that I have to do in the normal kind of commute if I was to go from my house down into the city here. So the thing about this bike is, of course, its compact size. That is why they've made it so small, is that people can fold it up, take it into the office. Now it weighs 21 kilos without the battery, so it's 24 in total with the battery, and it's not too bad compared to some of the other e-bikes like the M1 Pro that I reviewed with the 20-inch wheels, the fat wheels. It's a lot heavier than this bike. So it folds into that small size, you can fit into a car boot, under your stairwell, and that is one of the positives, one of the main things to get this particular bike. The way it folds up, the handlebar goes down, you can fold in the pedals, that there is great. But just the size of the frame here is an issue for someone like me being 186 centimeters tall, and I do weigh 79 kilos. I find it a little bit too cramped for me. It's just not comfortable. I wish I could get this seat up a little bit higher, but I can't do so. I'm at the minimum now. I cannot really put it up any higher at all without having the risk of it breaking it off or something, which could be dangerous. Now the seat, nice and large. I can get it up to a very, very good height. It is very comfortable if I'm not pedaling a lot. It's got springs in it, as I showed you when we looked at the design of the bike. So if you use just the moped mode, which is just put on the accelerator, don't pedal at all, super comfortable for those city commutes that you might have to do. However, when I need to pedal a lot, I find that the seat's a little too wide, and it will cause issues with it rubbing on the inside of my thigh there. Now that's just me. It could be other people might be fine with the seat. So the gears on this, or should I say the lack of gearing, is another thing too to be aware of. There's no gears on this. It's just a single, that's it, okay, the way it's set up. So if you need to go up a lot of climbs, you need those lower gears like the other models like the D4S and the D11 have. You're out of luck here, so you do have to work a bit harder for that, I find. Now the 350 watt motor does have plenty of power to get up climbs, and even a steeper climb that I did here isn't really an issue for this. You have to work a little bit, but it's not too bad for that. Now with the top speed of this, because it has the lack of gears, I find you're running out of top speed on the flat. You're going like this, pedaling like crazy, and you can't really get over about 27 kilometers per hour on this model. And I don't believe you can unlock the speed limit on this one either. Legally, it's set to 25 kilometers per hour for the sales here in the EU at least. They have to do that by law. So it really boils down to, it's got all the compact size. Do you need that? Do you need the removable battery, which is great, by the way, lockable. You can take it out, charge it at home, leave it somewhere else without having to take it up the stairs because it's so heavy. That's good. But really, I think you need to think long and hard. Do you need a foldable bike? And for me, because of the size of this, just being the tiny 14-inch wheels, it feels like I took my 7-year-old daughter's bike and decided to go riding on it because of the size of this thing and how it is. So I prefer and would recommend you go for the D4S or the D11 over this, unless of course you need the super compact size. So thank you so much for watching my review here